What happens when you're about to release a book on meaningful work and someone creates a barrier to meaning in your work? Today, I'm going to be talking with Tamara Myles, bestselling author, speaker, and researcher. While preparing to launch her book with her writing partner, Tamara found herself in a moment that many women know too well, a moment of being unseen, underestimated, and quietly pushed into a smaller box than the one she's earned. Instead of staying silent, she chose to speak up. So in this conversation, Tamara will share the story behind the moment, a story she almost didn't tell, the one her marketing team advised her not to share, and the one that revealed just how easily meaning can be stripped from our work. So stay tuned for a behind-the-scenes look at how my guest wrestled with the choice to stay silent or speak up. Have you longed to use your voice, yearned to express yourself in a bigger way? Have you felt like you've got something important to do on the planet while you're here? If so, you're in the right place. This is the Ideas Love Community Podcast. I'm your host, Jacquelyn Fletcher Johnson, and I work to help leaders, founders, and visionaries use their voice, whether that's building a thought leadership platform, getting on big stages, or positioning themselves as leaders at work. Speaking of activating voice, it is time to welcome the one and only Tamara Myles to the stage. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I am good. I'm excited, a little nervous, but really happy to be here.
So grateful that you are here, that you are, willing to come and tell your story. It is a brave thing to do. So before we get started, though, we always start with the mugs.
Yes.
So you got a mug today you're going to share?
I do have a mug. This mug is from 2010. It has pictures of my kids.
Oh my God.
And they were little. The two older ones here are in college now, and the little baby here is a junior in high school. But I chose this mug not only because I love the nostalgia and reminiscing, but also because they are kind of the reason why, I'm telling this story and why I spoke up and reclaimed my meaning back and all of that. So I thought it would be fitting to have them here with me today.
That's beautiful. And it's weird too, because we had a psychic moment.
Oh my goodness. Oh, look at that.
Isn't that funny? Out of all the mugs.
I know. What's funny is that we have a mug thing like in our family. Yeah. It started every trip we took, my husband would like buy me a mug. And it got to the point where I was like, we have enough mugs. Like we have too many, stop buying mugs. And because I said that, it became more of a thing. And so now they like sneak mugs in and so we have, and they're all meaningful. So you can get rid of any of them. And then friends, like my co-author and friend Wes has jumped in on the mug bandwagon. So he like will give me mugs to celebrate milestones.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
I know. So it was hard to choose, but this one felt fitting.
It is so fitting. I mean, especially for what we're talking about today, which, activating your voice and speaking up when it's hard is hard to do anytime and all the times. And so I love that you've connected it to why. Yeah. We're doing it not just for ourselves, we're doing it for other people. So do you want to introduce yourself a little bit more? Talk about your books, talk about your work. Your TED Talk was just nominated as an editor pick.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Tell us more about you.
Sure. So I teach leadership at Boston College in the Masters of Science in Leadership. And then I teach positive psychology. I'm an instructor at UPenn and a researcher there. And, I'm a speaker consultant. I've been doing this for 20 plus years. In my book on, meaningful work, which is the research that Wes and I have been doing for the past 5+ years, just came out last year in April. And that's when I gave the TEDx talk. And then it got chosen to be an editor's pick, which is so exciting. But I've been waiting a whole year almost to be able to tell people and, be able to share it. So I'm really excited.
And I see it right there behind you on the
Oh, yeah, the
mantle.
book. That's
There
right.
it is. So we met because I hired you to speak at a conference,
That's right.
and you were in the research at that moment. Just briefly with that book, what are some of the highlights that you'd want to share with people today about that book, that process, what you learned in your research?
Yeah, so Wes and I met in graduate school when we were studying positive psychology at UPenn. And we both came from very different backgrounds, but with the same goal, which was to study how leaders make work meaningful, right? Most of the research that looked at meaningful work looked at the individual perspective, like how can I create more meaning in my own work or find more fulfillment. And we knew from personal experience and from the leaders we worked with that leaders played a big role. So we wanted to find out, what is that role, and are there specific practices that increase meaning at work? And so we set out to do that research, and we started with a qualitative study. We then continued and did a quantitative study. And 5 years later, we had a lot of data from over 1,200 people, and we found a suite of practices that increase meaning at work. And people really care about meaningful work, and now more than ever, with Gen Z really speaking up. So the timing was really fitting. There was so much interest in a book about it. So we translated the science and the academic research into a really actionable leadership framework, and wrote the book, and it's done really well.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is super fun. So you have a lot of experience. You've been a consultant for a long time. You've been a speaker for a long time. You're getting ready to launch this book. What happened?
Yeah, so we, as you know, and I think your audience knows because you're trying to connect people, right, with publishers and all that, the book writing process is long and intense. And so when we finally were getting ready to publish, after many rounds of writing and rewriting and editing and all of that, we had a product that we were really proud of, and it was in production with the publisher. And our job was to start getting ready. And so the publisher does some marketing, but we had decided that we wanted to also do our own marketing and PR to really kind of help the message reach more people. And so we had interviewed several marketing agencies that, people had recommended to us or that had good reputations. And we decided to go with one that, they seemed really great. We had a great conversation with them. And the goal was for them to not only help us market the book, but to help position us in the market, because as co-authors, but we each have our own business. And so to help us think strategically through, how do we do this together? How do we launch a book together, but also grow our own platforms, right? And so in order to do that, they spent a lot of time, like we gave them the manuscript of the book to read. They interviewed different people. So they interviewed some clients that Wes and I work on together. They also interviewed some of Wes's own clients, some of my own clients. They had access to, our website, our LinkedIn's, everything. They really did a deep dive to learn about us and like who we are, what our strengths are. And then we came back. It was November of 2024. Our book was scheduled to come out April 25. And they were super excited to present the strategy of, here it is, like we've compiled, all the information, and here we're excited to present our strategic recommendations. And so we get on the Zoom, and they start taking us through their recommendations and the deck and how they got there. And they're saying, for the two of you, the idea is that you're so strong individually, but you're even stronger together. So 1 + 1 = 3. And they're giving us ideas of other pairs that work really well together. And then they said, and individually, here's how we recommend positioning you in the market. So then they said, Wes, currently, and do you have that slide that you can share?
We will just pull it right up so everybody can see it. Here it is.
So they were like, Wes, currently you're positioning yourself as a consultant, a CEO, a researcher, an author. But here's what's missing. Like from our conversations with you, you have this rich background as an entrepreneur, an advocate, a bartender. You're an optimist. You've traveled the world. You're so analytical. We have to bring that in and position you in the market like this. And so we're like, wow, this is great. Like, that's true, Wes, all these dimensions, And so we're like, okay. And then they go, okay, Tamara, you. And then they bring up my slide. We need to position you in the market as a mother, daughter, sister. And yeah, I mean, purpose, empathy, curiosity. I was pretty shocked. I mean, I went from this like, oh, generate excitement with Wes. And Wes gets to be the world traveler and the analytical mind and, the optimist. And I get to be defined by the roles I play in my family as a mother, daughter, sister. It was really jarring. And the meeting continued, they wrapped it up. And my first feeling was really shame. I felt so ashamed. My first thought in that moment when I saw that slide, my first thought was, wow, Wes must have interviewed a lot better than I did.
Wow.
He must have said things that were a lot more impressive than I did. I can't believe, I talked about my kids and my mom and my sister. What was I thinking? That was the first thought. And I felt so ashamed.
Wow.
Yeah, it was tough. And, when we hung up that Zoom, I didn't really know how to process this. I didn't know what to do about it. This was a end of the day meeting. I ran out of my office and ran to the high school. My son had a wrestling meet. And so I was watching wrestling and I was kind of shaking inside. I was so angry. My husband was there and I told him, I was like, oh my gosh, look at what happened. And I brought up these slides on my phone and he was like, what? He was so angry, right? And I was like, okay, this is validating. And then, a close friend who has a son on the wrestling team as well was there. And I was like, look, she's like, what? I mean, people were outraged when I saw them, which then started making me validating, right? The emotions that I was feeling. I was feeling really angry. I felt shame. I was just feeling so unseen and undervalued, especially because it was in contrast to Wes, right? It really felt like, okay, well, Wes gets to be the co-author, the author, the traveler, and I get to be like the person who's at home, like cooking and cleaning. And, it just, it felt like a big contrast.
And the consultant and the entrepreneur, where you were much more experienced as a consultant and entrepreneur, right? Because Wes had only started his business a few years before.
He had a lot of experience. His background was an entrepreneurial background. His latest business he had just started a few years before. So he had a big background as an entrepreneur. And we had a lot of strengths that complemented each other. There was no lesser or more than in the relationship. We were equals, and
but they didn't shine that light on you at all.
No, not at all. And Wes was really upset too. He called me the next morning and was like, I'm so sorry. I should have spoken up. I can't believe they did that. I was like, I know I should have spoken up too in the moment, but we were so shocked, in the moment. It's hard because you're processing, you're like, did this really happen? And then you're feeling shame and shame makes you retreat. Right. And I'm like, why did I answer I'm questioning all my answers and, and so it was hard. So So it was great to have Wes's support. He felt terrible that he didn't speak up in the moment, and so did I. But we're like, you know what? It's okay. Get to sit with it. We get to process it, and we get to come back. We had a follow-up meeting the following week to give them feedback. And so that's when I really had to make the choice of, am I going to, what am I going to do? Am I going to let this go and just say, you know what, this just isn't the right direction. Like not the right strategy for us. Like that's an easy path.
Yeah.
To say, but the more I sat with it, the more I kept thinking about my daughters. Right. I have 3 kids, a son and 2 daughters. My oldest one is in college. My youngest one is in high school. And I kept thinking about them, and it's not going to be that long until they are out in the, workforce. And do I want them to ever have this experience? No. Does me standing up for myself change the world in a way that, kind of keeps them from ever experiencing this? No. But I can show them what it is like to stand up for yourself, right? Because early in my career, I didn't. It happened to me right when I became a mother. I used to work in advertising, and I was told if, I had like some metrics, some goals to reach. And if I had reached those goals, I would be promoted to director at the end of the year. And I got pregnant. I had Bella, and I came in 2 weeks after having her. I had to come in for the formal review, right? Everything was in person. I didn't even have a smartphone. And I came in, and behind closed door, my boss's boss told me that the timing was no longer right to promote me because I had too many competing demands in my personal life.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so that was really sad. Like, again, it was like horrible and a sad moment. I remember showing up at home. My husband had taken the day off to be with her, our little 2-week-old. And so he had champagne ready. I walk in and he's like, congratulate. And I just started crying. And I obviously finished out my maternity leave. I left that job, and I ended up leaving the industry. And when I was doing all this research on meaningful work, I learned that when people strip meaning of your work, when work is stripped of meaning, you not only tend to leave the job, but many times you leave the whole industry, right? That's a common experience. And so I knew too much this time. I had too much experience. I kind of felt like I wanted to, and I had to speak up.
Yeah.
And that was hard. I did a week later, and it was really hard to do.
How did you prepare for that moment? So, I mean, it sounds like you went out after this happened and you went to your trusted circle to say, am I off base here? Like you were questioning your own response to it, but
Right.
you're like, yep, this is right. So how did you start preparing for that call?
So Wes and I agreed that, he was like, we will handle it however you want to handle. And I said, great, we will start the call, together. And then I want you to give me the floor, and I want to give them feedback. I'm going to take my time. Just need your support to be there quietly. And what I did was I kind of wrote down which feels a little even embarrassing to admit here, but I went back through my entire career and wrote down a list of all of my accomplishments. Every big accomplishment, and things that like Wes and I, who work so closely together and are such close friends, things that he didn't even know, things that most people didn't even know. But I was like, you know what? Like, you totally underestimated me. Like, you're going to sit here and listen to the things I have to say. And so I had prepared, I had the list written out because I didn't want to forget anything. And we started the Zoom, and then I recorded myself on my phone. So I didn't want to show the video of who it was or who the agency was or anything, but I wanted to record myself because I wanted to show my daughters at dinner that day the video of me standing up for myself.
Oh my gosh, like full body chills.
Yeah. So I had my phone propped up, kind of like here, right? I'm on the Zoom like this, but I had my phone propped up here. And then I say, I want to give you some feedback. And I just go through, and he says, oh, I said, I felt completely undervalued, underestimated. And he started speaking up and said, what? I'm sorry. I said, no, please listen. Please do not interrupt me. I have a lot to say. And so then I went through and I told him many things, and then I said, I thought a lot about what role I might have played in the way that you portrayed me by talking about my family, my background being from Brazil and how tight knit we are, how we value relationships and all of that. And I said, but your job as a marketer is to take that and turn it into gold. If I tell you I have a big, messy family and we are always in touch and it's complicated, what you do as a marketer is you say, okay, you know what? Tamara's a great systems thinker. If I tell you I talk to my mom and my sister every day and we're so connected, you turn that around and you say, Tamara is incredible at fostering and maintaining relationships.
Yes.
Right. And that's what you do. And you didn't do that. And I closed that video by asking, did you show this presentation, this deck, your strategy and your proposal to a single woman before you presented this to Wes and me?
Mm-hmm.
And he says, no, he did not. He didn't show it to a single woman before he decided the best way to portray me, and market me.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're getting lots of love in the chat. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for telling that story. You showed me that video, and you were so crystal clear, and you were also shaking.
I was shaking. I was nervous. I mean, I was sweating. My voice was trembling. My hands were shaking the whole time. It wasn't, and I, we know this from science and from our own personal experiences. Being brave doesn't mean that you're not scared. You just do it scared.
That's
right. And my voice was shaky, and I wish it wasn't. I was, I had a hard time saying some words, especially in the beginning of the video. Mm-hmm. It was hard. But throughout the whole video, I am shaky and I'm nervous and I'm scared. But I'm also, and it was really important to me to be true to who I am, yes. Even in that moment. I didn't want to be like, you whatever, call them names and be like, how dare you, or all of that, because that's not who I am. Like, I truly believe in kindness and in respect, assuming the best, and, giving people the benefit of the doubt and all of that. And so I tried to give the feedback in a way that was firm, but kind, in a way that offered grace, and because I also I was like, okay, I'm doing this for my daughters. They're going to watch this and I want them to be proud of me. Yeah. I want them to be proud of how I showed up, even in this moment. Mm. And I wanted to be proud of myself, of how I showed up. And, he really heard me, and he said no, and he apologized, and we ended the call. And and then we never heard, didn't hear anything else from them at all. And many months later, I got an email from him. And it was a really nice email. Mm. And he said, I've thought a lot about what you said. I am so sorry that I did that. That was not the intention at all. And it was just like a heartfelt, sincere apology after time went by, after he reflected. And I know for sure that that's never going to happen again with those marketers. Those two guys are never going to do that to another woman again. So at least that impact I had.
At least that.
Yeah.
I mean, the ripple effect of you standing up and saying that is going to reverberate on and on and on to their circles.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, when I had when it first happened, I mean, it was such a crazy time getting ready for the book launch and all the speaking engagements and podcast interviews and like all the things that get added on to your life on top of your regular course of work, that at the time I was like, oh my God, should we share this? What should we do? And I decided to just like put it aside. I gave the feedback, but we got to keep moving. We got to give this book the best shot. And so we hired another marketing team, an incredible agency, got through it. And then I hadn't really thought about it much, but a friend of mine who is a world champion mountain biker, she is, also an instructor at UPenn with me. She was here visiting me, and she was guest lecturing at my BC class. I invited her to be a guest lecturer on accomplishment and meaningful accomplishment. That's her area of expertise. And she stayed with me at my house, and we were just talking about being a woman in business, she a woman in sports and that experience. And it kind of reminded me, I was like, oh my gosh, did I ever tell you? She's like, no. So I showed her the video. She watched the video of me giving the feedback, and she started crying. And she's like, oh my God, thank you for sharing that. You just gave me permission to speak up. Like I've never spoken up. Like so many things have happened to her, as a world champion, elite athlete, being a woman, being a mother, and how you get underestimated and all of that. And she's like, you just gave me permission to speak up. She's like, you have to share this. You have to share this. And so I started thinking about it. I was like, well, maybe I will. And then that's when I went back to people. And I was like, do you think I should? And everybody's like, no, just let it go. Don't share it. But something inside of me kept thinking, yeah, maybe I want to share it.
It just kept coming back.
It kept coming back.
And you also received advice not to share it, that it would be a bad idea. What was that about?
So I think a couple of things. One, is it going to detract from your message of, meaningful work and how you're positioned in the market? It's going to create so much noise. Like, why don't you stay the course? So that is one. And the other one, I think there's like fear of being that labeled as the too sensitive or crazy woman, or, and the kind of repercussions of sharing a story like that, of being labeled as somebody who got underestimated, or maybe, I don't know, of judgment, I guess, criticism.
I think that holds so many people back from speaking up, is, imagining what the repercussions are going to be, or the judgment, or what are people going to say? Am I still going to fit in, or what are they going to think of me? And it takes a great deal of courage to live your leadership and really stand up with courage and do that. So what was the final thing where you're like, you know what? I have to share this message. Was it your daughters, or what was that final moment where you're like, I'm going to do this anyway?
So I think it was when my friend was here, and she was like, you have to share this. And I was like, I was told not to. And she's like, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. Yeah. And then I kept thinking about our own research on meaningful work and the importance of role models, and how, like, you can't not walk the talk. People who say one thing and then act in a different way kill meaning at work. Like, how can I be a person getting on stages, talking about meaning, talking about how leaders create meaning, and then not role model what I'm talking about, not role model what I did when meaning got stripped from my own experience as I'm launching a book on meaning.
I'm going to take a break here to tell you something really important. I am so excited to tell you, since you all have been following along on this journey, about the very first Gateway Gathering and Pitch Fest. It was a couple of weeks ago, and it was absolutely incredible. You've seen me build it here, and I gathered luminaries from all parts of a thought leadership platform, including Monique Ruff-Bell, Chief Program and Strategy Officer at TED, a literary agent, a speaker's agent, a big New York publicist, and an entertainment executive. So attendees could listen and learn and have fast access to the people who open doors to big opportunities. It was so fun to see the brave people who got up and pitched their ideas. And we had so many folks that were flies on the wall watching this whole thing happen so that they could prepare for using their voice in the future. So it was so successful. We're doing it again. So put on your calendar October 6th to the 8th of 2026. And if you want to join a coaching sprint to put your ideas in the spotlight, send me a DM or sign up for my newsletter. I'll put the link in the chat after the show. And now back to the show. It takes a huge amount of bravery, and I love that you model leadership for all of us. But I think there's a lot of us who are thinking, especially in the times that we live in, that speaking up can feel dangerous, that speaking up can be divisive, that speaking up can, again, spark judgment. What is it in you that gives you that resilience and courage when you have to face something really hard?
I think having a bigger why is the main thing. Like for me, it was so easy to just turn the page and go to the next agency and kind of forget about this, and I was getting really angry. The more I thought about it, the more I told somebody else. Like I showed my daughters, I showed my son, even important. I'm talking about my daughters, but also for my son. What a great lesson, right? He's going to be out in the world soon. And gosh, I hope he never treats women or underestimates them or anything like that too. And so I think that was my biggest driving force. But what I know about resilience, about courage, and about all that, I think number one is that our emotions are data. Right? It's like, so listening, taking the time to step back and listen, that for me was really important. If I had reacted in the moment, I think I would have been super combative, or I would have been apologetic almost, because I said like I was ashamed. And so I think taking the time to step back and kind of notice what emotions you're feeling, labeling them, like I'm feeling shame, I'm feeling anger, I'm feeling unseen, violated, like all these emotions, frustrated that this is still happening in 2025. Like all those things, taking the time to notice and name the emotions can be super helpful. And then choosing, okay, how do I navigate this? What are my options? And I could stay quiet and just pivot. I could write a really angry email. I could post the 2 slides online and tag them. And, I had a lot of choices of what I wanted to do, how to navigate this, and then having the time and the support to say, okay, how can I navigate this in a way that respects who I am and what I stand for, and also kind of takes my agency back and reclaims the meaning that was stripped.
You reached out to me at some point in this journey, and we had a conversation, and you said, should I be telling this story? What do you think?
Right.
I was so moved by the fact that you would reach out and share your story with me. And, I'm thinking about the meaning that you are now deriving out of having this conversation publicly. Where do you hope this goes? Like, where do you think you're going to take all of this next?
I don't know. I don't know where I would take it next. I think, if one person hearing this conversation decides to speak up for something they believe in, or something, to right a wrong or fix a violation or reclaim their agency, I think then it was worth it, right? If one person does it. I also think there's a potential. I mean, I've heard from some women's groups, where like, come share your story and talk us about the steps. Like, what would you recommend? And this is where I can kind of share my own experience, but also like, what does the science say? What's the evidence for this? What can I bring from positive psychology and resilience into this conversation to give more people the tools to do that for themselves as well?
I love that so much. So, because that's one of the things that I work with people on is to get that bravery to speak up. That's what this new podcast is all about. It's all about activating voice and being willing to speak up and what that takes to do it. And part of the backstory there is I was really bullied as a kid, but also felt such a desire to be on the stage as a singer. And it was so interesting. So I have seen this: one foot on the gas, one foot on the brakes, one foot on the gas, one foot on the brakes. I speak up and then I don't speak up. And then I speak up and then I don't speak up. I feel like we're in a time where that the pressure to not speak could be very easy to feel, and that it's more important than ever to speak up and to say what is on your heart. But I love what you did. You described speaking up in a way that was, I had my emotional reaction. I felt all the feelings. I named them. And the fact that you felt shame just makes me feel like angry because I'm like, this was not yours to feel shame, but that's mine.
I agree with you too, but that's why I was like, why? And but I did. That was my first feeling. That was the first thought in my head.
And that happens to so many women where we feel shame when something has happened to us.
Right.
So I think that's really fascinating. But you used this moment to just pause and to say, okay, hold on. And you took that time and you didn't just respond. You didn't just shoot off an email. You didn't just post it like you said. And you got yourself to a place where you could think really clearly about what are the ripple effects? What are the consequences if I do speak up? Because there are always consequences. There are risks, of course. And I think about that where I'm seeing so many companies, say only people that are vice president level and above can speak for us on our behalf. You can only say things about these things, from the comms team. Like I'm seeing more and more restriction on what people are allowed to say. Right. And so that's disturbing on many levels. But when you add in the layer of I'm afraid to do it, I've felt shame, I'm angry, something's happened to me. For those people that are really still in that place of like, something's happened, I want to speak up, I'm scared to. Like, what are the things that you recommend?
I mean, there's like even so many layers to just even the question and the examples you shared, because I think, for you to speak on behalf of a company and represent their brand and their company, that's one thing. I was sharing it was my own story, right? It's my own experience, happened to me. So it's different. And we do live in a current era of cancel culture, of people getting canceled and all of that. So those are real factors that play into. And, it has taken me over a year to share the story publicly, right? I did speak up and give the feedback to them and kind of stand up for myself a week later, but I haven't it's taken me so long to share it publicly. And so, I think, there's a model of emotional intelligence that I love, and I kind of alluded to it earlier. I think it's notice, name, and navigate. So I think first, noticing what you're feeling, noticing, what the reactions of others. Like I went to a lot of people I trust, family, mentors, colleagues, people who I really trust to help me gauge like, am I crazy here? Like, did this really happen? Is this all in my head? Why do I feel shame? Like all those things,
Yeah.
and help me process. And so I think that's all part of like the noticing and then the naming. It's really great when we can label what we're feeling,
Yeah.
and we can say, I felt shame. Even saying that, is hard. Like, I felt shamed. I kind of judged myself and judged how I answered his questions. That can be hard. And that can also be really helpful, like just for to personally start processing your emotions. Like, once you label them, you can really process this and distance yourself from your emotions, right? Like, you're not
Yeah.
what you're feeling, but what you're feeling is data. Like, why did I feel shame? Why am I angry? Because emotions really kind of tell you, and especially anger is such a sign that something is worth fighting for and
Mm.
that something matters to you, right? And I had so much anger. And so notice, name, and then navigate is where then you have a choice here. Like, how can I navigate this in the way that how do I want to navigate this? What tools do I have? I mean, we talk about resilience being the ability to navigate challenges, right? And so how do I bring up my resilience here? And again, there's multiple paths of navigation, right? But and then choosing. So I think like this notice, name, and navigate model of emotional intelligence can be helpful when dealing with a situation like that, uh, where you might want to speak up for something that feels hard.
Yeah. I love that so much. I had a mentor once who was like, there are things that you speak up and say or write, if you're a writer, that are meant for you and your healing, your processing, your work.
Right.
And there's other parts of the time, like the other stories, other times to speak up. And that's for the world. And
Right.
sometimes those things are the same, and sometimes they are not.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing, that there's a culture now that has grown up where you have the feeling and you respond immediately.
Right away. I mean, I think it's what's so hard about social media is a lot of their currency of attention is based on anger.
Yes.
And so, they're trying to get people to get angry and respond right away and comment and share or cancel and all of that. And the ability to take that step back
Yeah.
and really notice, like, why am I feeling so angry at this? Why does this matter to me? Does it matter to me? Am I going to care about this in an hour? Right? I still cared about it deeply a week later. So it really mattered to me.
Yeah. Well, and then you show up in this conversation with such different energy. Like, you come in grounded, you come in as a leader.
Right.
And that's what's available to you, right? When you do that work for yourself beforehand and press that pause button.
Right.
I
Because
love
then
that.
you get to decide. And I think that's where a lot of our agency on autonomy lives. It's in that decision of like, how do I navigate? Right. And once you notice and you name, you take that step back and you do kind of that inner work and even outer work with your trusted advisors.
Yes.
Then you get to really decide what to do. And I think in that decision is where your power lives, because you can navigate it in a way that feels aligned. And I think that's so
Mm.
important. I really didn't want to be regretful of how I handled it. I didn't want to. And I knew that if I started yelling at them, called them names, how dare you? And I'm going to tell everybody to never work with, like, it might be the right thing for other people, but it wasn't how I wanted to show up.
Mm. What happened when you showed the video to your daughters?
So then the call ended, and I was in this like hyper emotional state, really still, right? We hung up. I was just like catching my breath. I was very shaky. Wes called me. He was like, "You did a great job. I'm so proud of you," and all that. So that felt great. And then later that evening, when we sat down for family dinner, I shared the video. And they were like pretty, it was like it's a heavy video. It's a hard thing to watch, right?
Yes.
So they were like, wow, wow, mom, I'm so proud of you. They were so proud of me.
Mm,
Yeah, they were so proud. My husband was really proud of me. So, and I was proud of myself.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just love thinking about the fact that we both have our mugs
I know.
with our little ones. That's why we do this.
Yes.
Right? That's why we show up and do this work.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. I mean, and that's what, think about all the women that came before us. I mean, because this is a story of bravery, but it's also a story about women being underestimated, women, kind of being compared to men and seen as not good enough or not as powerful, right? I mean, Wes and I were complete equals. I had written a book before. This was my second book. Like there was no reason for those slides to look that different. And so while it is a story about standing up for yourself and being brave and fighting for what you believe and reclaiming meaning, it's also a story about women and how we're treated in 2025. And so I think a lot too, not only about the future, but with gratitude about the past and the women who did that before us.
That's absolutely right. I loved how you described that that this man went and thought really hard, clearly about what had happened. Because I think the other thing too is that all of these opportunities, like you have the folks that you're in that moment with, it's like it's not your responsibility to make that other person feel good in that moment.
Right.
And you just modeled that so beautifully. And you're not responsible for their response. You're not responsible for any of that. But when you show up with such grounded leadership and speak so, with alignment, it allows that openness of the other person to say, oh yeah, maybe I do need to look at this.
Right.
And I love that just opens the door to learning for people across all kinds of divides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I will say, right when we hung up, but not when we hung up, when I finished speaking, I asked, did you show this to any woman? And he was like, no, we did not. And I was like, yeah, I didn't think so. And then he responded to everything I had said. And he was like, I'm so sorry. This was definitely not our intention. And I said, I was like, I never for 1 second assumed that you intentionally put me down in a relationship with Wes. Like I never assumed it was on purpose, but you have to be intentional the other way. Like you have to be intentional the other way. You have to make sure that you're representing me correctly. You have to make sure that we're represented equally, and so that's the other thing too. Like I never, like I knew for sure that it wasn't on, why would they do that on purpose, right? But you have to be on purpose the other way. You have to intentionally look. I mean, the least they could have done was to show a woman team member,
Yeah. I love that point of being intentional about your own lens.
Yes.
Right? No matter who you are, what is the lens that you're coming to this with and how can you broaden it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's what great storytelling does. That's what great literature does. That's what great, consuming wonderful stories, that's what it does. It opens us up to other people's experience so that we can broaden our minds.
Exactly. We can build so much empathy
Yeah.
in ourselves from reading great novels and living those like vicarious experiences, whether we're reading a book or we're listening to somebody's stories. And I mean, that basically was the basis of our whole research on meaningful work. The first phase was all a qualitative study. We interviewed senior leaders excuse me, at exemplar organizations. So organizations that were on the leading edge of creating more meaning at work, who were intentionally trying to do different things to create meaning. And so we were interviewing those leaders and we were asking them for stories. First, every interview opened with, tell us about a time when work felt really meaningful for you personally? Like,
Mm.
tell us the story about that time. Like, what was happening before? What went through your mind? What did you do? What were you feeling? And oh my gosh, those stories were so amazing and so inspirational. And then they were telling us stories about what they were doing to create meaning for their teams and the reaction. And those are the stories that are, all in the book. And it's so rich. The stories are so rich. We can learn so much from people's stories.
We absolutely can. And I am so grateful that you decided to tell your story here with me. I can't tell you what it means to me. It was so moving to have you reach out. One of the questions, there's a couple of questions I always ask at the end of these interviews. One is, if there's something from our conversation that you think the folks listening should kind of let it steep for a while, what should they reflect on after this conversation?
What I hope that stays with people in this conversation, there's two things. Number one is, if you sense that somebody else in your day-to-day experience at work is stripping meaning from your own work, whether because they're undervaluing you, taking credit for your work, they make you feel like what you do doesn't matter, or you're doing a bunch of tasks, you don't feel connected to the impact of your work. There's many ways, right? When we feel like our jobs are meaningless, what can you do to kind of claim back that meaning? And, how can you stand up for yourself? And I hope people kind of sit with that for a little bit and just let it color their own experience for a couple days, and see where they can and maybe should want to stand up for themselves. And then the other thing I think is just knowing that deciding to speak up and stand up is hard.
Yeah.
Like, just because you want to do it, or just because you feel like it's the right thing to do, it doesn't mean it's easy. And you can do it with a shaky voice, with trembling hands, and with alignment, that it is possible.
That's a mic drop. I need to get an actual microphone that I can just drop on the floor. That's huge. Thank you for that. I hope everybody wrote that down. What about a cup of coffee? With who would you have a cup of coffee with? Stranger, living, dead, any point in history? Who would you have a cup of coffee with if you could have one with anyone?
If I could have a cup of coffee with anyone, I would love to have my grandfather, my mom's dad, Grandpa Mario, back. He grew up poor as the youngest of 12 kids. He often didn't have shoes to wear, and, kind of a very humble upbringing. And him and his brother started a transportation business that grew to be one of the biggest in the country in Brazil. And he was just adored as a leader by all his people. He was so humble. He was quiet. I never heard him raise his voice. I'm one of 14 grandkids. We have a huge family. And I know him as a very loving father and grandfather and family man. But I wish I could have a cup of coffee with him and find out about him as a leader. And what did he think about? What did he do? How did he do it? How did he make decisions? And I've heard from people that worked for him. Because when I went to Brazil once, I was like, I want to know more. And I interviewed my grandmother, and I interviewed some people who worked for him. But I really wish I could have a cup of coffee with him.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. It sounds like he would have had a lot to share.
Yes, I would have had so much to learn from him.
Any final words you'd like to say?
Thank you, Jackie, for creating this space and for holding this conversation. It was hard for me to even come and share so long after, and after so many people encouraged me not to or advised me not to. So I really appreciate you.
Oh, Thank you. I mean, just again, I believe so strongly in the act of sharing these stories. And when we do, the ripple effects of them, I mean, they just go out and can touch people's lives that we'll never meet.
Right.
And so just the act of you showing up here and doing this today, it's going to have an impact on everyone who listens to your story. So thank you for sharing it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Ideas Love Community podcast. It is so thrilling to me that you're here, that you're listening, that you're watching, because ideas do love community. And I need your help. Please review, please subscribe, please share this with your friends, the ones that you know have something big to say, the ones that give you chills when they open their mouth and tell you their ideas about the world. Those are the folks. We're building a community here, a community that needs to be visible. Because you see, my job is to activate the voice of soul in the world. And your voice is critically important in the times we're living in. The voice that comes from the center of you, the one that has to be heard. All right, my friend, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, be huge. Have you longed to use your voice, yearned to express yourself in a bigger way? Have you felt like you've got something important to do on the planet while you're here? If so, you're in the right place. This is the Ideas Love Community podcast, and I'm your host, Jacquelyn Fletcher Johnson.